Welcome back to another episode of the Microshift Project Podcast. I'm your host, as always, Nick Valinchak. That's Nicky V if you're nasty. And what are we wearing today? We are wearing the Yo Ho Ho by Youngstown Clothing Company. I'm always trying to look fresh. That doesn't always mean dressing in label whore clothing, it could just be something comfortable, but it has to be something that tells a story about you. And you know what? We're in that season. I love Christmas, and I'm thinking to myself, this isn't a Youngstown podcast. That's never been the goal, but I love my community, and I think I'm going to take a little bit of time every week when we do this podcast to talk a little bit about Youngstown. And I love Youngstown so much that, okay, let's just be honest, I'm lazy and I don't feel like editing and cutting through all of this stuff and combining it together. It just doesn't sound fun to me. So I'm going to make sure that when I talk about Youngstown, when we have guests, I'm going to do it with them on the podcast because I'd love more people to come check out Youngstown. I mean, we have great food. The Penguins play here. We've got great food. Anyway, there's a lot of fun stuff to do around here. Plus, we're really close to a lot of different cool things. One thing I want to talk about today is Christmas. I love Christmas. Obviously, I love Christmas. It's September, and I've already recorded 2 podcasts out of like the 9 I've done wearing Christmas shirts. I'm just a Christmas guy. This all stems from the fact that my mother was a big fan of Christmas, and that is something we connected on young. And after she passed, it just made sense. I don't want to say it made sense, but after my mother passed, it was something that I always really clung to that made it feel more special to me. I felt like when it was Christmas season, I could feel my mom around me. And I think that's something we can all kind of understand. I'm sure we've all lost someone through the course of our lives that when you're a certain place or you hear a song or see something on TV, it reminds you of them. And that's how Christmas is with my mother. As I've become an adult and can make my own decisions, good, bad, or otherwise, I have started to celebrate Christmas extremely early. In fact, I will give you a little bit of a glimpse behind the curtain. I used to make my wife put up our Christmas tree when college football started. So oftentimes it would be early September or sometimes late August, and we'd be the house in the neighborhood who had our tree up. Now, I wouldn't go into like fully decorating the house, but I liked having my tree up. There was just something about the combination of some of the things that I loved the most: my family, Christmas, college football, NFL football, that all made it feel that much more comforting. We have a store in our area. It's a garden center of all things called Cranax. And Cranax is well known for having a great Christmas display, and it starts this 10th or 11th of September every year. So we just went there this past Friday, and it was awesome as always, and I encourage everybody to check it out. And there's just so much cool stuff to do there, to see there. They have such a wide variety of Christmas decorations, Halloween decorations. They have hobby type stuff, so you could get, cars, kits, things like that. They have lots of toys for the kids. They have good candy aisle selection. It's just a really interesting place that has been such a staple in this valley for so long. And I as long as I've been alive, I have been going to see Cranax Christmas display. I get excited every year. And so I just wanted to throw a little homage out there to Cranax. And yeah, I'm excited that they've been a part of this community, and they've been such a big part of my life. Because I think people sometimes overlook how a place like that can add such a level of comfort to you. I mean, I will tell you that we will start going there right after the 4th of July, because that's when they'll start putting some of the Christmas stuff out. And there's just this comfort when I walk in the store and I can see it, where most people aren't even like thinking about Christmas, and they're like, it's like half a year away still at this point. I'm starting to get excited, and I know the buildup is real. And I encourage everybody to have stuff like that in their lives. I mean, for me, for sure, it's Christmas and football. Now, that's not to say that those are the most important things in my life, because they are absolutely not. My family comes first and foremost. My friends, well, it just depends. No, I'm kidding. I love my friends. I love the fact that we've been able to build a community of friends. Our kids can play together. We can go out to eat together. It's a lot different world for my wife and I than it was 5 to 7 years ago, even with the people that we have around us. And we're very lucky to have the people we have around us, but there are still just things that make us feel better. And those are some of the things that make me feel better. One thing I love talking about, other than myself, is entrepreneurship. I don't think I've really been very clear about what my path is there. A lot of this conversation up to this point has just been about how addiction really impacted my life. And we're going to kind of draw some parallels in what we talk about today. But I was entrepreneurial very young. I would say 5, 6, 7 years old. I lived in a growing residential neighborhood where there was always houses being built around us. And I really honestly remember thinking to myself, I want to make my own money so that when the ice cream truck comes, I can just say to my mom or dad, hey, give me my money. Or even more realistically, I'm just going to go take my money out to the ice cream truck and buy ice cream. Like, it wasn't that I didn't want my parents to buy it for me. It isn't that they would have always said no, but part of me was just kind of like, yeah, I just don't want that to have to be part of the equation. If I can just hear the ice cream truck, go up to my piggy bank or my wallet, pull out, and let's be honest, at this time, it was probably $2 or $3, and go down and get myself a WWF ice cream sandwich and not have to interact with my parents at all, because it's 1991 and we don't have the same concerns back then as we do now. Like, that's a dream scenario for me. So I kind of sat back and just analyzed the situation. And I don't know whether I had seen a commercial or a TV show or something where the kids were selling lemonade. But I looked at what was going on around me and I was like, hey, there's a bunch of like work trucks constantly coming in and out of here. And there might be 6 or 7 houses being built at one time. And if I make a, pot of, I don't know, a jar, whatever you want to say, of Kool-Aid, and take it around and sell a cup for 25 cents, like, that's nothing to these people. Everybody loves helping a kid, and it's going to be something that refreshes them at the same time. And I can't tell you how many times I would go around and the foreman or something would be like, hey, we'll buy it for $5. I'll just give us the whole container, just put it in as many cups as it takes to fill up and just leave them here and we'll give you $5. And so there were days where I came back and I had like $20. And as a kid, I mean, I can tell you right now that meant I could buy some ice cream sandwiches. I could probably buy maybe even 10 ice cream sandwiches if I wanted to. I could go buy a wrestling figure. I could go rent some movies. I could go buy 20 to 40 packs of baseball cards. I mean, that was real money when you're 6 or 7 years old. And I remember even when I had my wrestling figures after that, I always had these very elaborate wrestling figure federations where I had notebooks on notebooks on notebooks. And I think it was like a coin flip system, and it would be like 2 out of 3 for the opening few matches, then 3 out of 5, and then 5 out of 7 or 4 out of 7 for the main events or whatever. And I had like an elaborate system in place for who were the champs and how it was decided. And, you know, it was like I tried to create my own wrestling company around my toys. And it was nothing I ever really monetized, but I tried as best as I could to like figure out how I would make it a business. And I created scenarios where, you know, if all of the bad guys won, then the next show automatically lost money. And, you know, I would start with this amount and it would go down and, you know, go up and so on and so forth. It was just like a little nerdy thing that I tried to do. And then the internet came around. I will never forget for the life of me when we got the internet. I want to say 95, 96, AOL dial-up, very slow. Oftentimes it might take 20 minutes when the connection was really bad, and you would get so pissed if somebody called at that time because the connections could be weird and it might kick the process off and you'd have to start all over. And if you were going through one of those cycles where it was really slow, like, oh, well, anyway, at this time I had a couple of wrestling movies that I bought from Best Buy with Christmas money, probably 3 to 5. I think my brother and I had like 21 total wrestling figures. We had a handful of wrestling magazines, and that was pretty much the extent of our collection. And we got on the internet, and I don't know how or why, but I got in the WWF AOL chat rooms, and they had forums, and I remember 3 or 4 different places where I had started trading wrestling collectibles. And it wasn't just, oh, I have this one thing and you have this one thing. I was pretty quickly able to assign values to things based off of demand. So I would kind of like, I found the list of all of the toys that had come out at that time, and I printed out a long piece of paper that had all of this, and I would go through the message boards and put a check mark down every time I saw that someone had one of those things. Because up to this point, how in the world could you possibly judge rarity? It isn't like we had today. And even with sports cards now, you can get a 1/1, a 1/5, a 1/10, a 1/99, you know, all of these things that let you know a very precise amount of how many there are and what rarities it was. Back in the day, it was just old wives' tales that, hey, we've heard that the black card LJNs were the lowest produced because the license was running out. And same with the green card Hasbros. You know, there were areas of the country that never even saw those. And so I was able to take that information and take what I had and figure out ways to create deals that were always extremely beneficial for me. At the time, there was no value system really to judge what something was worth. It was really a true bartering system where if I had something you want and you had something I wanted, well, guess what, motherfucker? You could call me Monty Hall because we're going to make a deal. eBay came along and kind of changed that a little bit. But at that time, it was really the Wild West. So I would find scenarios where people wanted something that I had, but they had something that I felt like had the attributes of being rare. And that if I was able to get it, I, with it in my possession, would hold it on a pedestal. And if I was going to trade it to someone else, I would want way more than what the average trade would be on it. And so over the span of 6 months, my dad sent packages to Japan, to England, to Germany, to South America, many, many, many times to Canada. I had a little wrestling business. I'm having to send him cash checks for hundreds of dollars. It is a real little business. And in the whirlwind of all of it, I turn around and take my little 21 figure collection, and it's well over 150 at this point. I have hundreds of wrestling magazines. I have 70 original wrestling VHS tapes. I have autographs. I have stuff that I never knew existed, but I also never in my life would have imagined that I acquired. And so I had these very entrepreneurial attributes and desires very early on in life. And it's so weird, like how the youngest part of your life, the first 5 years, you're basically mush. And then the next 15 years are probably the slowest years of your lives, because the time from me doing this to the time of me becoming a drug addict is like 2 or 3 years. It's just so wild to think about. It was like at 14, I was trading wrestling toys online. And by the time I'm 16, I've, already become hooked on some narcotics. It's really wild. Now 2 years feels like a couple of weeks. But back then, 2 years, that was serious business. That felt like a lot had transpired in your life. And so as I made my way into addiction, I don't want to say you lose those attributes, but you lose the desire of what those attributes could be used to build, right? You don't find too many entrepreneurial drug addicts because there's only so much that can have your attention. And when you're addicted to drugs, it's pretty much drugs. And so as I went through the path that I've discussed ad nauseum at this point, and got clean, I was faced with the next opportunity in my life of what my entrepreneurial dreams could be. I want to say when I was at the rescue mission, after a few months, I was really like, this is what I want to do with the rest of my life, because I felt so impacted by what the people at the rescue mission had done to me and for me, that I wanted to take that and be able to give it back to other people who were coming through there in need like I was. And I would say it was probably about 6 or 9 months after I worked at the rescue mission where I was like, ain't no way, can't do it, not going to happen. And the wildest part is people, when I tell them this at the time now, always say the same thing. Oh man, was it just really hard working with the homeless people there? And I would just be like, no, that's the easy part. They are there. Yeah, sometimes there's stupid stuff, I've had people try to fight me. I've had people try to tell me they have weapons and that they're going to do whatever to me. You get some people that get unruly and out of hand and say stuff to you to try to push you. And I had to learn how to bite my tongue, because what am I going to do? Lose the job? And at this point, I don't have much confidence of knowing like what I could go do outside of the rescue mission. And I certainly don't have a college degree yet. So I had to build a thicker skin. But the reality was, it was a lot of the people I worked at the rescue mission with. It was a lot of the administration that I saw doing things that were not on par with the values that I held. And it was at that point that I was like, I'm not going to do this, because I'm not going to give my time, and I'm not going to give my name, and I'm not going to give my effort to what I consider a lot of hypocritical action taking place. And so it took a long time. It took 5 years of school to get to the point where I was able to work my way out of there, but I got out of there. But around that time where I decided that the rescue mission wasn't the thing I wanted to do anymore, Kyle and I had mended fences and we had started working on this wrestling company. And I think that, that was the first thing that really allowed me to understand how much of a similarity there can be between a recovering drug addict and an entrepreneur, because both of them are starting at ground zero, right? Kyle and I didn't acquire an existing wrestling business. We had to figure out, how do you do this with no help? And one of the ways you do it is you lose a lot of money because you make mistakes because you didn't have the rule book to play from, because one doesn't exist. Both of these things require relentless perseverance. I think Kyle and I can only speak for myself, and I'll get Kyle on here eventually, but I think that for me, there were so many times I wanted to quit because it was failing, and ultimately it failed. And it took a while for me to understand that that is okay. That is one of the outcomes of doing something is failure. And I think most entrepreneurs will tell you that they probably fail at more things than they succeed at. And that's okay, because we live and we learn, right? What am I describing that's different from someone who's recovering from drug addiction? When you're recovering from drug addiction, it's not that much different than when you're starting as an entrepreneur, because you're doing something that you really are doing like you've never done before. And I don't think that makes a lot of sense to people. I think sometimes people think that it's, oh, what do you mean? Don't you just, there was a period before you were a drug addict that you were a normal functioning human being. And yes, maybe that might exist. In a lot of people, there are some character, I use the word attributes way too much, but there are some characteristics that you have that are very similar to what a drug addict is. So maybe you have never done something like this, but there's no real good, solid guide on what to do as an adult. You just kind of figure it out yourself. Even now, I have conversations with many of my friends where we look at each other and we're just kind of like, how are we adults? Like, we still talk about a lot of the same stuff. Our humor is still the same, but I don't feel necessarily like an adult inside. I think a lot of times I kind of sit back and I feel like I'm still a kid and I'm just faking it till I make it. I don't know that that was necessarily felt by the generation before us. I don't feel like it was, but I think it's more common at this point. But ultimately, I think that you deal with so many ups and downs as an entrepreneur, and just like when you're recovering from drug addiction, if you decide to quit, you are damned to go back into a life that you previously hated. So for a drug addict, you go back to becoming a drug addict. And sure, it's going to be fun to get high for a while, and then it becomes the monotony of doing this thing that is doing nothing productive for your life and is destroying everything about you. For a lot of entrepreneurs, giving up means going back to that job with that boss that I absolutely hated, who didn't give me respect, who took me for granted, where opportunity was never going to be made available to me. But even though it's a different level of what you go back to, it's still going back to something that's not going to be positive for your life in the short or long term. So I think at the end of the day, what it really comes down to is understanding that there's not a lot that separates us. At the end of the day, we come up with labels and we come up with things to try to figure out how to characterize us as being different from other people around us, but we're not. We are all the same. We all have the same issues. We all have the same desires and wants. They may manifest in different ways, but we all genuinely and generally have those same things. I think about when we were doing well as a wrestling company and when I was doing well in my recovery, and the single thing and the single theme that just kept going through my mind was stay grounded and be humble, right? Because this can all go away at any point in time. And I'm not saying your sobriety can go away at any point in time. That is something you control more than I think you can control the outcome of a business you are running. There tend to be way more external factors to running a business. Not to say that there aren't for people who are drug addicts, but at the end of the day, I can sit inside the fire and say, no matter what, I'm not using. You can run a business, but you can't sit down and say, we're never going out of business. I'm constantly going to be where I'm at. There's way too much that goes into it. And ultimately, in business, I failed. But in my sobriety, in what I consider my sobriety, which again, I have never hidden from the fact that I will drink and I will occasionally use marijuana. And I feel so old saying it like that. I really do. I feel like I've betrayed the 16 to 20-year-old me. But I will still use those substances. I don't use them out of control, and I don't let them control what I'm doing. I don't drink a couple of drinks and wake up the next day and say, yep, let's go. Time to go get some crack. Let's go get some heroin. There's been no desire to do that whatsoever at all. But I've never failed at my sobriety. Failing at business can be fucking heartbreaking, because especially with wrestling, I busted my ass selling Kool-Aid so that I could buy wrestling stuff. I sold. I had my little wrestling figure fed that I tried to run as a business. I did all the stuff online with, selling wrestling and collectibles and things like that. And I ran a wrestling business and it didn't make it. And I wanted to be a wrestler. And so it was very painful for me to have to start to bury my loss while trying to maintain my sobriety with an active user around me, which is fun. And then once I lowered it into the ground, begin the process of unpacking what useful information I can take from it to not let it happen again. And again, I think Kyle and I would both agree, if we went back, we could have done things differently. We could have extended the longevity of the company. I would have been more able to put money into it, and I think we would have been able to kind of do it in different ways that would have been more impactful to the bottom line of our business. Obviously, now he and I both have a decade plus of running our own successful businesses. So I think things would have been a lot of the same. That's why when it came to the marketing company, I knew that there had to be a higher level of that relentless perseverance. It's so easy to work for other people when they're giving you money and feel like they can lead you around because they're giving you money. And at times especially when you're first starting to run a company, it can be very testing on your patience and on your focus and on having questions and conversations with yourself like, do I really actually want to do this? And I can look back at when I was going through recovery, and I can say, I remember a month in, and I remember being at the mission, and I remember the people at the mission trying to get me to install structure into my life. And I remember accepting it so easily, and then very quickly feeling like this is such a foreign concept to me, to where I have to be at a certain place at a certain time, and more importantly, and often do something that I don't want to do for someone else, that it's very testing, and it's very easy to say, fuck it, I don't want to do this anymore. This is not what I want to do. I want to have more freedom. I want to be able to do the things I want to do. I don't want to have to answer to anyone. And so, you know what? I'm done. I'm going to just go back to, maybe I won't go back to doing what I was doing, but I have to find a system where there isn't structure and that I can get myself in a position where I can get myself clean. And then you very quickly come to realize, no, chaos is in addiction. Structure is in sobriety. And you're not going to find chaos in a successful sobriety. That's just the reality of the situation. If you continue to live in chaos, it is not long before something gives, and maybe you don't go back to drugs, but you go to a place mentally where you may not be able to recover from. And you could be dealing with things like depression. You could be dealing with things about wanting to do harmful actions towards other people. So you might escape the thing you're in to try to achieve a result that you want, but you're not going to get it. There has to be structure. There has to be some kind of stability. And I tell myself that when I was having these initial headbutt moments with our first clients, and trying to make sure that there is no running. You need this to be able to, just like I needed the structure of the rescue mission to advance myself as a sober human being, I need the structure of having these clients and having the responsibility to myself and them to be able to have this company be able to succeed to the degree that it has today. And we're not even a big marketing company, but we have been able to do well enough that we've been able to bring people in, that we've been able to have many people have an income that comes directly from our company, and that's how they're able to live their lives. I can look at other people and say, oh my God, they're able to be alive and functioning and do the things they want to do because of the company that we've created. And I think that's pretty cool. You know, I don't think about it often enough. And when I said it just now, I felt that sense of pride that I think it's okay to feel every once in a while, that I've been able to build something that had an impact on the lives of people around me. And folks, at the end of the day, that's what I'm trying to do here with the Microshift project. Now I'm excited, and I'm going to tell you why. I finally got my speech back edited from Boston speaking at MIT. That was a huge thing for me. That's really what got this ball started, was doing that speech. Everything else has happened since that speech. Why is that important? Well, when you're a speaker and you don't have any speaker reel to show people, it's really hard to get other speaking engagements. Well, now I don't have that problem anymore. Now I have an asset that I can try to use to help myself get more speaking engagements, because that's really what I want to do at the end of the day. I want to be able to take my story and adapt it to the audience that I'm talking to that day for the subject matter that would be most important to them. Second thing, I promise that this is the last solo podcast that I'm going to do. Even if I have to take a week break in between doing podcasts, this is the last solo podcast I'm going to do, at least for a while. I have some guests that I've talked to and have been willing to commit. They're all over the board in terms of what they're bringing to the table. Some of them have an addiction background, some of them not. But really, this is not just about addiction and recovery. This is about those little moments in life that made us reverse course. And I know what they've been for me, but I'm just excited to hear what those things were for other people and how they allowed it to change their lives so that they could go on to impact the lives of other people. So I can't wait. I don't know who my first guest is going to be. I do have an idea of who I want it to be. I'm going to keep it under cover for right now. Not that it would matter, because I don't think anyone knows who this person is, but it feels like it would be an appropriate first guest. So I'd like to thank you for sticking with me up to this point. I think things are going to get fun, because you know what? It's kind of hard just to talk into a camera. I don't enjoy this as much as I do talking to other people and really being able to unpack the impact that these little scenarios have had in their lives, and to talk about them, about the awesome things that they're up to now. So if you've stuck with me this long, thank you so much. If you're new, please subscribe wherever you're listening to this at. And if you feel like something I said today would resonate with someone you know, do not hesitate to share this with them. You can find me on Twitter and on Instagram at Nick from CWE, and on YouTube at the Microshift. And we will talk to you again with guests next time.